Welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. And as you once again can see in the background, we are going through the Handbook, part 1 by Harold Cavalli. The Handbook by Epictetus, as far as I remember, a book from Stoicism. And as you can see on the top left hand corner from the modernstoicism.com site. So if you Google it, you're probably going to find it in a second. And we're going ahead with chapter 5. Up to this point, I have not gone through any comments on any of the chapters I went through, just because most often it is just about translations and or why the author decided to translate this and that in this and that way. And by the way, on the very bottom, I'm just reading, Harold Cavalli is the assistant editor of Stoicism Today. He studies philosophy at the University of Oslo. Just to mention, in case it's necessary to know. But I'm just seeing I'm having a lot of performance issues for whatever reason. But it is going to be fine, I hope. I guess. Or somewhat. Chapter 5. Humans aren't bothered by events, but rather about their opinion about the events. Something like death is nothing terrible. If it had been, it would have seemed so to Socrates as well. But it is rather the opinion about death, the opinion that death is terrible, which makes death terrible. So, whenever we get hindered, disturbed or bothered, let us not blame anybody else, but rather ourselves, or rather our own opinion. An uneducated person accuses someone else for what he himself has done badly. The one who has begun his education blames himself, and the one who is educated blames neither anyone else nor himself. In the end, I do have to agree, but there is some caveat to that. It may seem very easy to say, it may seem very easy to read about it and be like, well, yeah, this is the case, this is right. But working on that and acting on that, it is not easy at all. It is a lot of work and it is a lot of mindset, I'd say. It's a very big mindset game that we're playing here in general with Stoicism, because of course, I do have to agree with most things, but it really is not easy, and one really has to practice that. Unfortunately, this is actually the end of this article, but I'll have to have a look at whether the part 2 is online yet. Stoicism Today articles, let's just see. Yes, there is actually a part 2, which was uploaded today or posted on June 4th, 2022. This is the second installment of the new translation of the Handbook being carried out by Harold Cavalli. The first one is here, and you can also read about the motivation behind the translation project by following the link. The Greek text of Epictetus enchiridion is available from the Perseus project. It's probably going to be way more difficult to read because I assume, I actually do not know, but the language being used may be very quote-unquote old. Chapter 6. Don't ever be proud about an advantage that depends on another. If a horse had said, I am beautiful, then that would have been tolerable. But you, when you puff yourself up and say, I have a beautiful horse, you should know that you are puffed up about the excellence of the horse. What then is yours? The usage of impressions, therefore, when you keep your usage of impressions in accordance with nature, be proud. For this is a good of yours that you should be proud of. Yes, I would say so as well. Of course, you can say, I have a beautiful horse because I'm having so much money, because I've worked so much, and because I'm good at what I'm doing. I could say that, you could say that, and I think then it is also tolerable or understandable and usable and whatever. But yeah, period. That's it. I think it might also be the case, but just because I'm thinking about it, with quote-unquote God-given things, like I am, or somebody being very good at something, somebody being very intelligent, having a really high IQ, this is not necessarily something that this person, did anything quite. This person was just born with those abilities and with those skills and whatever. Being then proud of that, well, yes, you can be. It is still yours. It's still in accordance with nature, because this is your nature. But I think you know what I mean. It's like, yeah, it's just an advantage, and everyone has that. But I think actually being proud of something that you yourself have achieved, that you have worked for, that you've done something for, a thesis, some project that you've been working on for a long time, this is indeed something you can be proud of, because it is done by yourself, or was done anyway. Chapter 7. If you're going out to get water while you are on a voyage and the ship is anchored, you may collect a small sea snail and a cuttlefish. But you should keep this ship in mind and always turn towards it in case the captain calls. If he calls, you must be ready to rid yourself of all this, so that you will not be bound together and thrown aboard the ship as the sheep are. And likewise in life, but rather than a little sea snail and a cuttlefish, you will be given a little wife or a child. Then there will be nothing wrong about that. But when the captain calls you, you must rid yourself of all that and run to the ship and not look back. If you're old, you should never go far away from the ship, so that it will not fail to come when you're being called for. There is actually no comment on this chapter, because I guess it is rather clear when it comes to translation. It is very, I think, kind of the same. As far as I do remember, and as far as I can understand, it is an analogy. Or is it a metaphor? No, it's not. Might be. I don't really know. It is about death, so I do want to repeat one. But when the captain calls you, so when death calls you, you must rid yourself of all that and run to the ship and not look back. If you're old, you should never go far away from the ship, so that you will not fail to come when you're being called for. Chapter 8. Do not desire that things will happen as you want, but rather desire that things will happen as they do in fact happen, and you will do well. This is the concept of amor fati, love faith, or love your faith. Whatever happens, be happy about that. And, well, actually not merely being happy about it, but actually loving it. Whatever is happening to you, loving it. Once again, I do want to point out, it is nothing easy to do. It is very easily said, but it's amazingly difficult when you're trying to do so, when you're trying to act on that. The 9th. Disease is an impediment for the body, but not for the will, as long as you don't intend it to be so. Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will. Say the same for each of the impediments. You will find out that it is not an impediment for yourself, but for something else. I've once read a bit of a clearer explanation, I'd say, or a clearer description of this chapter or of this concept. When you're ill in terms of your body, you're not ill in terms of your mind. So you can still do shit. You can still think and use it. So I don't know, maybe he is heading for like excuses like I've broken my leg, so I'm not going to do anything all day long. But you can still read something, you can still think about something, and so on and so forth. The 10th and last one for today. For each of the things that happens to you, remember to turn towards yourself and to search for what kind of power you have that you can use to deal with it. If you see a beautiful boy or girl, you will find the power to remain steadfast with regards to the boy or girl. If you must deal with pain and hard work, you will find endurance. If you must deal with abuse, you will find tolerance. And if you are habituated in this way, the impression will not overwhelm you. Remember to turn towards yourself and to search for what kind of power you have that you can use to deal with. I guess, or think, believe, my point of view, it's very encouraging and it is very self-empowering. I do also want to underline, this is a text written by someone that lived, I think 2000 years ago, a bit more, maybe 5. I'm not quite sure about that, but sometimes, when I'm reading, where is it? If you must deal with abuse, whatever abuse it might be, you will find forbearance. I don't know what this word means, but I do once again want to underline, it is a very old book and a very old person that wrote it, so certain things were just in this society back then and should not be part of the society that we ourselves are finding ourselves in. Still, yes, we have a lot of energy, a lot of power, and a lot of abilities in us, whether you believe in it or not. And I guess we all have been in certain, actually hopefully not, but some people have been in certain situations where their full power actually was shown, like mothers kind of, throwing away fucking cars because their child is underneath it, and so on and so forth. So we are actually pretty powerful, and we can do lots of shit. Even if you do not necessarily believe in it, you can still fucking do things. But yeah, with that being said, gonna see you the next time. Bye bye.